We cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them. When Albert Einstein said that, I think he might have been saying that to an individual, but it's certainly applicable to leaders as well. I think when John Maxwell talks to us, as he will today, about mindset matters, he's really telling us that our mindset is important in how we look at problems and we look at opportunities. Hey, we're back with another episode of Maxwell Leadership Podcast, and really our entire goal here is very simple. We want to add value to you, our listener, you as a leader, so you'll multiply value to others. My name is Mark Cole, and today John really is going to challenge our thinking. He's going to challenge our attitude. He's going to challenge how we intentionally move through our life and our leadership, because he's going to talk about the gap among leaders, the thinking gap. I'm excited for you to hear from John on this topic. I'm excited to sit here with my good friend, Chris Goede, our co-host today, as we listen and learn and then discuss and give you practical ways to apply this concept to your life and your leadership. Make sure today that you go to maxwellpodcast.com/mindset matters. You'll be able to download a bonus resource for this episode. You'll also be able to watch us on YouTube. So, are you ready to look at your mindset? Are you ready to change your mindset? Are you ready to enhance how you're thinking? Here we go. Here is John Maxwell.
Mindset matters. How I think, how you think, determines so much of our success. In fact, I would be very prone to say to you that without any question, the biggest gap between successful and unsuccessful people is the thinking gap. I've talked a lot about my father because he's an amazing man. He was an amazing leader. When he and Mom celebrated their 50th anniversary, our whole family went to Hawaii for a week to celebrate with them. And one night, everybody had gone to bed except Dad and me, and we were talking. And I said, Dad, you have such an incredible positive attitude. Your thinking is so unbelievably contagious with people. I said, tell me about your thinking and how did you get that positive attitude? And my dad surprised me. He said, I'm naturally not a positive person. He says, I'm melancholy. I think I'm naturally a little bit bent toward cynicism and maybe a little bit of negativism. I said, wow, you sure don't show that. And he said, well, I don't show that because he said, well, let me tell you a story. He grew up in Georgetown, Ohio, just a little town in southern Ohio, not too far from Cincinnati. He said, we were all poor in this little town of about 1,000 people. He said there were only 3 families in the town that had any money. The rest of us were just poor people. And he said, I was a kid that loved to work, and I was a hard worker. And he said, starting literally in elementary school, by the 5th or 6th grade, I was doing chores for those 3 families. I would do errands for them. And really throughout school, junior high, high school, he said every day after school, I'd go to work. And I'd go to work for these 3 families. And I kept saying, they're successful. The rest of us aren't successful. What's the difference? He said, I was a junior in high school when I came to this conclusion. The only difference between them and the rest of us is that they thought differently than we did. And he said, John, the moment I realized it was how they thought that was helping them to rise above the rest of us, that I determined to learn how to think in positive ways and to become a success. That evening, I went back to my hotel room and never went to bed. What my father said triggered me so much that I started writing on my legal pad thoughts and ideas, and it became the formation of the book, How Successful People Think. You've got to have the right thought patterns for you to get the right return. And I'm here to tell you that when it comes to our thinking and our mindset, sometimes I just wish that, we could, have a zipper on our head and you could reach in and pull out that mind and kind of scrub it up and wash it up a little bit and just kind of get your mindset right, because I can promise you the moment that you begin to think correctly, everything begins to change in your life. And if you're going to be an intentional person that lives, one of the things you're going to have to do is you're going to have to be intentional in your thinking. No one ever intentionally lived without thinking first. So thinking precedes intentional living. Attitude will not replace competence. You know, if you're not a competent person, you may have a positive attitude, but you may lose your job. Now, the good news is if you lose your job, you'll still, I guess you'll be happy. You say, well, I've got some free time now. But attitude isn't everything, but it's the main thing. It's the difference maker, and it's the difference maker in all things being equal. If you've got to choose between two people to hire, all things being equal, experience, education, giftedness, but one has a good attitude and one doesn't, who are you going to hire? You're going to hire the person with a good attitude. Why? Because it has become the difference maker. And one of the attitudes I think that people have that really helps set them apart and helps to make them very, very successful is this. I choose. I choose to believe in myself, and I choose to believe in my purpose. Now, I know people who believe in themselves, but they don't believe in a purpose. They don't even have a purpose. I know people who believe in their purpose, but they don't really believe in themselves. And I just want to help you here that both personal belief, believing in yourself, and purpose belief, believing in what you're doing, they have to kind of rise together. Let me explain to you what I mean. If I have low personal belief, I don't really believe in myself. And at the same time, I also have low purpose belief. In fact, I probably don't even have a purpose. What's the result of that? Low personal belief, low purpose belief. What's the result? It's very simple. I won't get started. Well, let's say that I have high personal belief in me, but I have very still low purpose belief in what I should be doing. If I have high personal belief in me, I'll probably get started, but if my purpose is low, I won't stay in the game. I'll drop out. Well, what happens if I have very low personal belief, low self-esteem, a low sense of self-worth? Let's say my personal belief is low, but my purpose belief is high. Well, what that means is that I'll never accomplish my dream. And the reason I'll never accomplish my dream is not because I lack purpose, but I can't see myself accomplishing the dream because my personal belief is not high enough. You see, I know a lot of people that have great purpose, but because they have a low personal self-esteem, they sabotage themselves. And on their way to success, they make sure that they fail so they'll never have that success. You see, this type of thinking I'm talking about now is I believe in myself, high personal belief, and I believe in my purpose, high purpose belief. Now, when both of those are high, let me tell you what will happen. You will reach your game. And it all begins with how we think. The person that really does well is the person that understands that there's always an answer. That's what keeps creative people in the game. That's what keeps me in the game right now. There's always an answer. And usually there's more than one answer. The moment I begin to think like that, wow. Then I go from asking the question, can I? That question, by the way, just looks for excuses. Well, can I do that? Well, I don't know. I'm not sure I was born at the right time. I'm not sure I'm in the right organism. Can I? You need to switch from can I in your thinking. You need to go from can I to how can I. You see, the moment I go from can I, which looks for an excuse, to how can I, now you've already said, I'm going to do it. I just got to figure out how I'm going to do it. We aren't even considering excuses. And remember this, the best excuse is the worst excuse because you buy into it. It's all in mindset. Mindset matters.
Hey, podcast listeners. Many of you listening right now would probably love the autonomy that comes with owning your own business or becoming a coach that helps other businesses succeed. Well, we have a phenomenal strategy where you are 100% in control of your own business, earning income on your own terms, and have access to the people, tools, and resources you need to build a thriving leadership development business. When you become a Maxwell Leadership Certified team member, you join a global community of entrepreneurs led by our expert team of mentors and faculty, including John C. Maxwell. You'll also get one of the top leadership certifications in the world next to your name, giving you the boost you need to get started. Visit us online at maxwellleadership.com/join the team to find out more.
Welcome back, podcast listeners, podcast viewers. So glad to have you today. Chris, as we look at this, I love the standout statement that John said, how you think determines so much of your success. And of all the leaders on our leadership team, we have a brilliant, wonderful team.
We do.
Probably the greatest depender on thinking is you. Now, we've taken the genius surveys, we've taken all these surveys, but truly, you process, you work through it, and then come back, which is a true genius of yours. And so I'm really excited that you're here today on Mindset Matters.
Well, I appreciate that. I am surprised you invited me here today because you and I worked through some of those things of you're thinking too long, like, let's go. Mark decides at a quicker pace than I do. But we've learned to
But with
to work
very
that.
little depth, a whole lot of shallow.
No, you got a lot of experience. I love this topic. You and I, obviously, with the relationship with John, he's an incredible thinker.
Amen.
And we were listening to this, and it's almost like we shouldn't record this podcast. We should have recorded our conversation right before we got started.
I agree with that.
Because John said something in this podcast that Jake, we've never heard before. And so we're going to unpack that in just a minute because it is gold.
It is.
And so I'm sure he's taught on it. You and I were probably
Asleep or something.
thinking during that time. But let's talk about this for just a minute because Harvard Business Review says 97% of executives that they've interviewed said that strategic thinking, is the number one critical skill to success. And some of what's in here is backing all of that up. Your ability to be where we're at and to lead this organization, to take us where we're going, to be able to solve problems, to be able to innovate, to inspire others, all of that comes with your ability to learn how to think better. You have to spend more time thinking than you probably ever have, which is hard for you because you probably want to be in it, not on it. Talk a little bit about the power of being able to spend some time thinking, not only by yourself, but maybe with John, and how that has helped you lead this organization.
Yeah, I will, and I'll reference a story I've shared on the podcast. It was profound to John and I both. We were sitting with Ed Bastian, the current CEO of Delta Airlines, and it was about a year, maybe 6 months to a year after he had become the CEO, after he had been for several years the president. And John, always thinking of great questions, had already thought of this question. He said, Ed, what's the biggest difference between being the president of Delta Airlines and being the CEO of Delta Airlines? And Ed said, the realization that how I think is more important than what I do. In other words, he said, I spent all of my years as president doing the plan, gotta have a meeting. He said, now my success rests in how well I am thinking about our future. And he said, that is a different realization and a harder transition than I thought.
Yeah.
It's true too for me. I'm now an owner CEO, not just a CEO.
Right.
And that requirement of me to do the things that only I can do, that whole adage of leadership is about doing the things that only you can do and empowering others to do what they can do better than you. That's a true statement. And the thing that I can do probably better that I have to do more than anyone else right now is think about the future of our business and sustainability and
That's right.
vision. So today, this very day, and I've been looking for an opportunity on this podcast and you gave it to me so quick. I ran 5.2 miles today, which is good for me because I've taken a lot of time off for some health stuff and all that mess. So as I was running, let me say it again, 5.2 miles today, I spent this time thinking, Chris, we're recording today at the end of the day, and I've had a very full day, a very CEO futuristic part of our business day. And I got to tell you, the day was made not in the meeting. The day was made on the running track across the street from my house as I was running 5.2 miles and unpacking the meeting I was going to do. My whole point in that is often when you're busy and you don't put that pre-thought in, that intentionality of considering what you're wanting to accomplish before, we often have less than desirable results because we didn't do the pre-work to get the plan in place that we wanted to accomplish.
Yeah. What I love about that is oftentimes, whether it's you sitting as the CEO, or whether it's somebody leading a team meeting, whether it's somebody having a family meeting, whatever it might be, is that if you don't spend time thinking, then the complexity of any situation is going to weigh on you, right? It's going to be heavy. But in order to have resilience through that and not be overwhelmed, if you spend some time, just like your example right there, of thinking ahead of time, then you're going to be prepared. It doesn't feel as heavy.
Yep.
Even though the complexity of the situation is still the same, going into a meeting that you had to go into today as the CEO, if you hadn't spent that time thinking ahead of time on the business, would have felt a lot different. You may have been overwhelmed. And I think that's true for any of us, no matter what part of our life that we have complex situations or things that we need to think about.
Well, and let me say this. Let's get practical with it, because I can say all of that. But some of you, all of you are the CEO. You're the chief final decision maker of some area in your life.
That's right.
And many of us are the chief final decision maker of some area in our leadership, right? Some of us haven't arrived at that yet, but it's coming. And so let me tell you this. In the area to where you're the chief, the buck stops with you. The final responsibility is yours. How much thinking time are you doing? There's the question. How much thought did you put into the decision where you have the final the final veto, the final approval? And so it was so practical for me that today, as I was driving to the office for this meeting, I called Kimberly, my executive partner, mention her a lot. She helps me so much. I said, Kimberly, the status of the meeting and the importance of the meeting is directly proportionate to how much thinking time you give me before that meeting.
Wow.
So if you don't think a meeting's that important, back me up meeting after meeting after meeting. But if you can sense that I have an important meeting coming, it's on you to give me, I love putting the pressure on her. It's on you to give me thinking time before I get in there.
That's so good.
And I think
That's
every
so
leader,
true.
so again, going back, making this practical.
That's good.
Every leader that's carrying something that has the responsibility of the buck stops here, I believe as a general rule, you should have 2 minutes of preparation of think time to every minute of that meeting time.
That's good. Which that goes right back to what John was talking about in his lesson today, which is ironic that you even said this, where he says, hey, listen, an intentional person and how they live their life and their schedule has to be intentional in your thinking. And that's a practical example of exactly what you were just talking about. Big meetings today. Hey, Kimberly, I need a little bit of help. You got to give me a couple hours because whatever. And so think about everything that's going in your day and what do you need to block out and protect in order to think on so that not only you come in the best mark that you are, but you don't feel overwhelmed with the heaviness of whatever that is. And heavy to each of us in a different situation means different. So I love that you shared that because that's very practical that any of us, no matter what our roles are, can take that and go with it.
It's so practical. I'm going to come out of that, Chris, and you do so well. I love having you host, and we get all kind of compliments. In fact, I was just doing a podcast. You weren't able to be here. Your schedule didn't allow it, and somebody thanked you and I and said it was a great podcast, and we used it on a podcast that you weren't hosting. And I went, that's keeping his ego in check. For all of you that are watching, we've got to work hard to keep Chris down to the stature of us shorter people. But you do such a good job. But I'm going to turn the tables on you just a minute because of the story you were telling me before we even listened to John. This was before we even listened to the lesson here in the studio about a time recently to where you spent one-on-one time with John, and we had talked about preparation. Chris, think of some kind of a thing you're wrestling with and get the GOAT's opinion, the leadership GOAT, get his opinion. And you did that, and John called me right after and he said, Mark, we're so prepared. He was so prepared, not they. He was so prepared, and I'm just telling you, that was brilliant. It was awesome. I want you to walk us through that right there because you really were wrestling with a big leadership decision you need to make, and you had the right bullet points, the building blocks. John told you that. He gave you great accolades, but boy, he totally gave you a different way to look at it, to think about it.
Let me back up a little bit because you prepared me and said, hey, listen, I need you to jump on the plane. I'm still a little frustrated at you because the travel hours, by the way, weren't very convenient.
Now you feel some empathy rather than frustration.
I was going to say, but like he does that all the time. So I was like, dear Lord, okay. Let me back up a little bit because you prepared me and said, hey, you're going to have an hour and 20 minutes down, an hour and 20 minutes back. You got 3 hours with John. Spend some time getting ready. What does that entail? Thinking on my business.
Yeah, good job.
Right?
Good
and then thinking about where does my mindset need to be in a place that I know John is going to want to hear, but also John can then help speak back into anything that you, myself, anybody are doing to be able to steer the ship. So I did that, thought about several buckets that I lead and gave him a report on those buckets. But then I have a couple things that I needed to just get some leadership feedback on. And I thought through them and I ranked them. Now, I may have been a little bit optimistic because I think I had 5 or 6 on there. John, I didn't get past the first one. We never got back the first one. But I ranked them.
Another late night trip for you coming up.
Whatever. I'll take it. I might be sleeping at the airport, but that's okay. And so I ranked them. And so just real quick, the high level story was I've been working on this for about 60 days. Okay. So I've been thinking about it on my own time. I've been building out the plan. I know when I'm going to roll it out. I felt like I knew how I was going to go about doing it and how it's going to impact the business as a whole. And so I said, John, I just need to have you help me think through this, make sure I'm in the right place of how I'm going to deliver it, what I'm going to deliver. And so I cast the vision and I see him, and you know better than anybody, just begin to rock with a little bit of smile. And I was like, can I finish? Are you ready to go? Right. And he gave me some kudos. Hey, I think that principle's right. I think that's principle. I know why you were going to do that because that's a sweet spot of yours, but you can't do it like that. And that's how we began to think
Isn't that great?
On the business of some of the things we're going to shift around. And as the conversation was unfolding, he was getting more and more excited. I felt like he almost got sitting on my lap for a little bit, but he began to challenge the way that I was thinking, not only challenge it in a way that left me hanging, but he helped me think through why the challenge how I was going to go about it was a challenge and how to go about it differently. And he completely shaped my mindset and my thinking in certain parts of what I have to deliver. And it's just brilliant to be able to help me think, because what I had thought, and I was in my own, and I'm on it and I'm in it. And then I get this outside leadership expert to give me that and make me think a little bit differently. And I was driving home in the middle of the night. And I was so grateful because I was like, wow, he completely up-leveled my thinking and my mindset going into that meeting. Whether maybe I didn't feel competent enough, maybe I wasn't delivering it right, whatever it was, he allowed me to think completely different.
And so here's what I've got to underscore. John does this and blows me away so many times, Chris. I'm blown away with the access and the mentorship of John. And you and I both, we've been with him a long time. And it never gets old. It never gets old, and it never gets less awesome.
Right. That's right. No doubt.
And so let me underscore something. You're still doing the business plan. He didn't change your mind on the plan.
No, good call.
You still had the right building blocks to do it.
Right.
You probably will still do most of the way you were going to do it, but your mindset before you go into it will exude a confidence that the people you are leading through a time, through a change, through a transition, whatever you're leading people through, your mindset is going to give them confidence that if you hadn't had the mindset, you could have done all the same ways, you could have done all the same things, you could have said most of the same exact way, but without a mindset shift, you would leave your people hanging rather than giving them something more substantive to do. There are so many times, underscoring this finally, there's so many times after talking with John like that, and he changed my mindset, that rather than going in with what was natural for me, which was a relational, hey, I'm going to be okay. And I went in, I know. And I go in and I say, hey, this is what it is. This is why it is. And people come afterwards. I've got enough relational bank.
Right.
I've got enough relational change in my bank that I don't have to do relational sometimes.
Yeah.
And the difference of me not doing it relational and just doing it factual and doing it very matter of fact, and this is where we're going, was noticed, appreciated, and followed.
Yeah, you hit it on the head. And then it made me think of one other thing about that, just to add on to it, was I had thought through this particular situation, cast the vision to John, and he changed my thinking and my mindset, not only on the delivery, but how it was going to be received.
So good.
So listen, I'm telling you, how do you make this applicable to listening today to Mark and I? There are people in your life that will be a thinking partner for you. And I want to challenge you to gain perspective from other people that maybe have gone before you or maybe are doing life with you. Because I would like to say that I put people first. It's so funny. I was highly relational. John's giving me the nod. Okay, good. Yeah. Okay, now let me, and he's like, but let me, if you say it this way, this is how they're going to think. And then he challenged me. He's like, how do you say it so that they think a little bit differently? He knew the answer, but he's walking me through this thinking exercise. And so there's just so many depths to this, that layers that we could unpack today. But we really just wanted to give you a couple of stories, and I didn't know you were going to ask me to pull that out. But it is, even in our journey, there are times, and this is going to lead us into the next part of this podcast, where we talked about, he shared something that for Jake, you and I heard the first time, because I want to talk about it. As a leader in John's organization for a long time, there are times where I don't necessarily have high personal belief. I know what the purpose is. I'm here for that purpose. And so I struggle on that. And then John's like, no, later on, he talks about how do you have high personal belief and high purpose belief. And so I kind of felt myself in that moment of going, I've always had high purpose belief on why I'm doing what I'm doing in this particular situation. Maybe I didn't have the highest personal belief, but after thinking and having somebody speak into my thinking and my mindset shift, my personal belief matched the purpose belief on why I'm going to do what I have to do. So you and I were talking, and I want to unpack this a little bit, because we had not heard this matrix before that he just laid out for us. And you are a big purpose guy, and I want you to talk a little bit about that and the power of that. But I also want you to talk a little bit about the journey as a leader in John's world and organization, your growth of your mindset and your thinking as you have gone through cycles, all of us do, that you've gone from, I've had high personal belief, high purpose belief. Mm-hmm. There are situations, because we all get knocked down, but you've been riding shotgun with one of the greatest leaders around and have had to make some shifts to where I would love to hear from you about, give us some feedback on when you had low personal belief, still high purpose belief, and how did you work through that? And how do you feel those cycles coming? Just unpack that for a few minutes, because I know purpose is so important to you, but I think this cycle you have probably lived out riding shotgun to one of the greatest of all time when it comes to leadership, more than anybody.
Yeah. So here's what's interesting. Boy, I could go so far with this, because there's been so many moments that the personal belief and the purpose belief was not synced up. And I too was blown away with John saying this personal belief, believing in yourself, purpose belief, believing in what you're doing, needing to be in sync. Let me say this though, Chris, and I'm going to give you a couple. One of them's really quick, but I'm going to give you a couple of examples to where this was true in my life, and I hope to relate with all of you in our podcast family. On purpose belief, let me say this that's very important to some of you. It was very important to me. I did not know my purpose until I was 33. Now, I know how come it took so long, but for some of you, you're 63, you're 73, and you still can't state that why, that purpose that you're here. I don't care where you are. What I do care is that it disturbs you, that you can't articulate, you can't make decisions on, and you can't live life according to purpose. You only live life according to yourself and what you're going to get out of it. Your life is going to be left unfulfilled until you understand your purpose. And I'm very passionate about this, Chris, because I don't believe you can have belief, purpose belief, if you don't know your purpose.
That's good.
Now, let me say this. My purpose is to motivate and inspire people to reach their full potential. Do you hear how easy that flows off the tongue? For 33 years, I couldn't tell you my purpose. But I'll tell you what getting my purpose at 33, and one day we'll do a conversation on how I got my purpose, which may inspire some of you to take a similar journey to get your purpose. But that's not today. Today is just one driving thought. If you can't articulate the purpose, the day you discover why you were born, that day, if you can't describe that, let that create a holy discontent in you that will drive you to do something to go find it. The day I found my purpose statement at 33, it did 3 things for me that had never been done before. Number 1, it totally made sense of every failure and thing that I celebrated as a success in the first 33 years of my life. It was a light bulb moment. I went, that's why I didn't like that.
That's good.
That's why that struggle. That's why that failure that everybody else thought was a fatal failure was just a setup. Immediately, I made sense of every failure and every success that I had had for 33 years. The second thing that I did, it made sense why I was fulfilled in certain things that I was doing right then and completely unfulfilled in certain things I was doing right then. It gave me a mirror onto things that I didn't have an answer for of fulfillment and discontentment in the present. But here's the other third great gift it gave me, Chris. It gave me a decision-making filter of what I said yes to and no to in the future. Now, I make every decision based on, does this move me closer to a more fulfillment of my life purpose, or does it not? So do I have purpose belief? It's been a long time since I've struggled with purpose belief because it is a decision-making filter for me. And now for 20 plus years, 22 for those of you that are adding, 33 plus 22 is 55. For 22 years, I've been making all of my decisions from a purpose belief spectrum, and I don't struggle with purpose hardly ever. And that is a true statement. I'm so thankful for it because I make decisions off of that.
And you make them, right? You make them consistently, and it's not tied to an emotion in the moment.
That's exactly right.
And by the way, don't miss this. In order for Mark to have this mindset, to be able to do that, I'm not going to say he thought for 33 years to get that, but I do know this. When he made the decision to sit down and figure out what that was, he had to spend time thinking on that. So as this all ties together, he only came up with his purpose belief, what his purpose was in order to get purpose belief because he spent time thinking on it.
And we have a lot of people of faith, different faiths, thank God, but faiths that are in here. And let me just make something. Too many of us mystify God's will, our faith purpose. Let me tell you something. What knowing my purpose in being placed on this earth has helped me determine what's the voice of God and the voice of Mark. Because I get distracted with personal ambitions, and then I know when something aligns with what was clearly given to me as a purpose statement, I know and can differentiate that. Now, let me give you a couple of quick practical, I think they're practical examples. Knowing my purpose statement has allowed me to say yes to things that John asked me to do that I would have went, I don't believe I can do that. A quick one that I share all the time is speaking. I can remember I'd given up speaking. I spoke earlier in life, but it was a different environment. It was a different outcome. It was with a different emotion. John's saying to be on my stage, buddy, you better bring good content. And I'm going, I cannot even say don't and doesn't correctly, John. I murder the English language all the time. You're going to have me carry your microphone stand. That's a long story. We've talked about it a lot. But I can remember the time to where my purpose belief of standing on John's stage was matched with personal belief that I should be on that stage. Chris, I can remember the moment in a suite in the Marriott Orlando World Center to where my personal belief began to match my purpose belief, and it was a difference maker.
Yeah.
And y'all, get the y'all right there. Just last week, I got paid the most money I've ever got paid to speak on somebody else's stage. The most money that I've ever gotten paid for me personally. Not John's not available. Will you come give us a good word of encouragement? I got paid the most I've ever gotten paid as a professional speaker. But let me tell you this, the butterflies I felt being on John's stage for free, I didn't feel any of them to being on somebody else's stage paying me because personal belief and personal belief and purpose belief match. Let me give you one more quick one. This one's real time, so this one I'm still learning, okay? This is not, let me tell you what happened, y'all, and I got a big deal, y'all.
Right.
But leading as John's CEO, I had great professional, purpose belief and personal belief for 10 years in that world.
Yeah.
Not until recently, I'm talking about in the last 6 weeks to 8 weeks, and some of this is fresh in my run that I did this morning. Have I told you yet I did a run this morning?
Yeah.
Some of that was even in the meeting this morning. Did I start feeling a personal belief that I can be the CEO of a company I own? I've had the second man syndrome, and I'm good with that. I'm very happy with that. I've got a purpose belief in being the second man, but I don't have a personal belief in being the man making decisions for a company that I own. And I have struggled with this for 4 years, bro. Yeah. And you know it.
Yeah,
you and your family have risked staying with me during me trying to figure that out. And as I'm now feeling just recently this matching personal belief, matching with purpose belief, I'm walking into meetings now. I'm having pre-conversations with you just a few minutes before this podcast that are different because
100%.
the personal belief is matching the purpose belief.
Yeah. And what's awesome to see is that you don't just get to a personal belief and just stay there, by the way. Mark has gone through these cycles. We all go through the cycles. I've had the opportunity to sit shotgun with Mark and watch him go through that. And it's awesome to see the way that you communicate and the way that you're able to connect and the decisiveness. And we were just talking about a recent meeting where you're like, yeah, no, the personal belief and my purpose belief for what we're doing here is equally as high right now. And I left the meeting going, meaning this is Mark talking, I left the meeting like believing myself. Like, where did that come from?
Yeah.
Just because, but you had direct alignment. Now, there are going to be times he's going to go through things. Hear us say this. It is a cycle. It is going to, but man, if you're not spending time getting the right mindset and thinking about that, you'll never get back to that personal belief. And the only reason I can say that is because I know over the last 6, 8 weeks, 12 months of some of the things we've gone through, the amount of thinking that you've had to put into, even alone,
Right.
in a room, right, off the side of your house until you got the right mindset and then go, I got it, right? You come out. So I just want to encourage everybody. What we're talking about is a deep topic if you really dig into it. And by the way, Jake's asked us to wrap this podcast up about 20 minutes ago, and Mark and I refused to look at him. But this is a big deal. And you're never there. We could tie this right into Mark about growth mindset, right? Because it is a continuous growth. I'm going to throw it back to you and close my last comment. We're big about impacting people, right? Everybody deserves to be led well. And for us, man, in order to impact people, I just want to challenge those that are listening. You have to leverage thinking, okay, at whatever level in order for it to shape your future as a leader, but more importantly for us, to impact the people that are around you. It could be your sister, it could be your mom, it could be a peer in the business, doesn't matter, it could be a team. But unless you leverage thinking, your mindset will never shift, it'll never change, and you won't be able to have the impact on people that we want you to have, right, of why you're listening. So,
well, mic drop on that, because I agree with you. You're not going to have a mindset matter moment until you look at the way you're thinking and until you intentionally begin to adjust the way you're thinking, which is what John helped you to do, which is what has been so poured into me in those 2 examples that I've given.
yeah.
I started this whole podcast 30 minutes ago, by the way. I started this whole podcast with a quote from Albert Einstein. Today, I want to quote Al. Al's a podcast family member. He listened to the podcast, Effective Ways to Grow Your People, and here's what he said. He didn't give us a bunch of accolades about the podcast. We hear those and we love those, but here's what Al said. He said, the most effective way to grow an organization is to grow the people in it. That's the power. And Al, I agree with you. I'll tell you this. If we didn't have podcast listeners, we wouldn't have a podcast. Number one, I wouldn't sit here and do this. I would go do something where people are. We're a people development organization. And so I sit here today and I not only recognize Al, but I recognize all of you that help us. You give us comments, you give us questions. And so today, what I would love to do is I'd love to give you a digital product for free. It's yours with a string. We need some feedback from you. We're working on something here at Maxwell Leadership to better ourselves so that we can better you, so that you will multiply better to others. And we're doing a survey, and so we would love for you to take this survey. It's in the show notes. And in exchange for your input to make us better so that we can make you better so that you'll make others better, we want to give you this free digital product. You can see all the details of that in the show notes. Hey, like Al, go make people better, bring a powerful, positive change, because everyone deserves to be led well.
Are you ready to elevate your leadership to new heights? Join the movement towards High Road Leadership with John C. Maxwell's latest book. In High Road Leadership, John explores the power of valuing all people, doing the right things for the right reasons, and placing others above personal agendas. Learn how to inspire positive change and bring people together in a world that divides. Order now and receive exclusive bonuses, including a keynote on High Road Leadership by John Maxwell himself and a sneak peek into 3 impactful chapters. Take the first step towards becoming a high road leader. Visit highroadleadershipbook.com to order your copy today.